This is the story of a man who raised his daughter alone after tragedy struck, pouring his love, dreams, and sacrifices into her every day. She grew up strong, graceful, and devoted, her heart full of loyalty, her spirit shaped by the weight of duty. She loved deeply, but the world demanded she give up her greatest happiness to honor the family that had given her everything. Yet when a life-threatening illness turned her life upside down, the choices she had made, the love she had buried, and the sacrifices she had endured came rushing back, forcing her to face the one thing she had denied herself for too long, true love. In this folktale, you will witness courage, heartbreak, and the extraordinary power of a heart that dares to follow its deepest desire, even when time is running out. Welcome to Afrotales by Zizandra, home of storytelling. From the moment Beauty took her first breath in a Lagos hospital, her life became a tapestry woven with sacrifice. Her mother had died, giving birth to her, leaving Mr. Stan alone with a newborn he wasn't prepared for but instantly loved. That day, grief and gratitude collided in the same room, and the weight of two destinies settled on Mr. Stan's shoulders. He named her Beauty, not because of her face, though she grew to become stunning, but because she was the one beautiful thing life had left him. Their small apartment in Surulere became a world built on quiet resilience, peeling paint on the walls, the hum of generators at night, the smell of distant street food drifting through the windows. Yet, inside those 4 rooms, there was warmth, structure, and an unspoken promise that father and daughter would walk through life side by side. Beauty grew up seeing her father wake before dawn, praying softly in the dim light, then heading out for work before the buses filled the streets. He wasn't rich, but he was dependable. He wasn't perfect, but he was present. And in Lagos, presence was worth more than gold. Beauty grew up studying every detail of her father's life with the curiosity of a child who had no one else to learn from. She watched the way he folded his shirts, the way he ironed the same pair of trousers 5 times a week, the way he always took a deep breath before opening letters, bills, mostly because he feared what they might say. She saw how fatigue clung to him after long days working as a supervisor in an electronics workshop at Yaba, how he walked with a slight limp when his legs were tired, and how he hid his pain under forced smiles. She also learned compassion from him, how he shared food with neighbors even when they had little, how he prayed for people he barely knew, how he always thanked God for another day, no matter how difficult. Beauty mirrored him in everything, his quiet discipline, his dislike for waste, his way of smoothing problems instead of arguing. Without a mother to guide her, Mr. Stan became her teacher in every way, teaching her to cook jollof, precisely the way her mother used to, teaching her to read the Bible, to sweep the compound, to respect elders, to speak gently but stand firm. He poured his entire soul into raising her, and Beauty absorbed every drop with a love so deep it bordered on worship. By the time Beauty reached her teenage years, the bond between father and daughter had grown into something that felt almost sacred. On evenings when he returned from work exhausted, she would place hot towels on his back or bring him water and sit beside him quietly, her presence a soothing balm. They spent weekends at the front of their apartment listening to old high-life music on his aging radio, the warm winds of Lagos brushing their faces as they shared roasted corn or suya wrapped in pages of newspaper. Sometimes Mr. Stan would talk about Beauty's mother, not too often, because the memory still stung, but enough that Beauty felt connected to the woman she never got to meet. Other times, he would speak in long lectures about life, about loyalty, about gratitude, about the price of raising a child alone in a world that wasn't kind to widowers or father-only homes. He told her repeatedly that she must make wise choices, that she must never forget the sacrifices that shaped her life, that everything she became was tied to him. And Beauty, with a heart that beat in rhythm with his struggles, internalized these lessons until they shaped the very core of her being. She made it her mission to repay her father, not in money, which they didn't have, but in loyalty, obedience, and perfection. But beneath the surface of their quiet home, something else was forming, something Beauty could feel but couldn't name. It was the heavy responsibility that came with being her father's only child. She began to see the world through the lens of duty. She studied hard not because she was ambitious, but because she didn't want her father's sacrifices to be wasted. She dressed modestly, avoided trouble, never spoke back, and always prioritized his peace above her own desires. She learned, in subtle moments, how deeply her father feared losing her. The night she returned home 30 minutes late due to heavy traffic, he paced the living room like a man whose world was collapsing. When she entered, breathless and apologetic, he hugged her fiercely and said, "Beauty, you are all I have." Those 5 words branded themselves into her heart, becoming the invisible chains that guided her every decision. She understood then that her life was not her own. Her dreams, her friendships, Her happiness, everything had to bend to her father's needs, his expectations, his fears. And she accepted this burden willingly, believing it was the price she must pay for being the child who survived. In Lagos, where dreams were often sacrificed for duty, Beauty grew into a young woman shaped entirely by love, loss, and loyalty, unaware that these same qualities would one day cost her the greatest love she would ever know. Beauty met Martins in their final year at the University of Lagos, and from the very first moment, something about him felt like a quiet kind of home she didn't know she needed. It was during a departmental seminar on a hot Wednesday afternoon. Beauty had arrived late, breathless, carrying a stack of research papers she had printed at a cyber cafe that morning. The hall was filled to the brim, students scattered across every seat and every inch of wall space. She scanned the room helplessly until Martin, seated near the middle, raised a hand and gestured to the empty seat beside him. She slid into the chair, whispered a soft thank you, and Martin smiled in that calm, gentle way of his, like a man who carried no rush, no chaos, no harshness in his spirit. After the seminar, they walked out together, talking about school stress, their project topics, and their plans after graduation. Beauty found herself laughing more than she expected, drawn to his simplicity, his sense of quiet responsibility, and the way he listened as though every word she said mattered. That day turned into study sessions, which turned into long conversations at the school lagoon front, which flowed naturally into friendship, then into a love so strong and pure it made Beauty feel as though life had finally shown her the future she was meant to walk into. They were inseparable. They cooked noodles together in Martin's small off-campus apartment, attended fellowship programs, shared their fears about life after school, and made promises to support each other no matter how hard Lagos became. Martins would always say, "Beauty, I don't know where life is taking me, but I am sure of one thing. You're the woman I prayed for." And each time he said it, Beauty's heart softened a little more, settling into him the way a weary traveler settles into a safe shelter. Their love story was not loud or dramatic. It was peaceful, intentional, and deeply rooted in the kind of companionship people spend their whole lives searching for. But life had its own plans neither of them saw coming, because while Beauty and Martins were building a future of dreams, another figure was slowly weaving his way into Beauty's life, not out of love, but out of her father's expectations. Roland had been Mr. Stan's biggest customer for years, a wealthy businessman who frequently purchased electronics from him in bulk. He was older, established, and carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed life owed him something. To Mr. Stan, Roland represented security, an anchor for Beauty, a guarantee that she would never lack anything in life. To Beauty, Roland was a stranger. She had nothing against him, but neither did she feel anything for him, not affection, not admiration, not excitement. He was simply someone her father respected deeply, someone who visited their home frequently, sometimes bringing gifts and engaging Mr. Stan in long conversations about business and Lagos politics. Mr. Stan always praised him. Roland is dependable. Roland is responsible. Roland is the kind of man any woman would be lucky to marry. At first, Beauty thought it was harmless admiration, the way fathers sometimes admired successful young men. But slowly, she began to notice a shift. The way her father watched her whenever Roland stopped by, the satisfied smile he carried, the subtle comments he made about her needing a stable man, and a future that won't be hard. She tried to ignore it until the day her father called her into his room, sat her down, and with a voice heavy with emotion, said the words that changed her life forever. "Beauty, my daughter, I want Roland to marry you." Beauty felt the ground shift beneath her. She stared at her father, shocked, confused, heart pounding violently against her ribs. "Daddy, what are you talking about?"
"Daddy, Martins, Martins, you know how much we love each other."
But Mr. Stan looked at her with the expression of a man who believed he was making the best decision for his child. He reminded her of the sacrifices he made raising her alone after her mother died, of the nights he went without food so she could eat, of the dreams he buried so she could have a better life. Beauty listened with tears streaming down her cheeks, torn between the man who gave her birth and the man who gave her love. Mr. Stan wasn't shouting or angry. His voice trembled with the weight of years of struggle, with the fear of seeing his daughter suffer in a harsh world. "I want to leave this world one day knowing you are safe," he said softly. "Martins is a good man, but good is not enough. Love is not enough. Choose stability, my daughter. Choose a future that won't bring you hardship." Beauty tried to argue, but guilt choked her. She felt trapped between gratitude and desire, between duty and happiness. Her father held her hand and said, "I don't want you to end up like your mother, suffering. Roland will give you the life I couldn't." Those words stabbed her. Beauty left his room trembling, feeling like the walls of the house she grew up in were closing in on her. For days, she couldn't sleep. She would sit outside their small compound in Sur-Alir, staring into the night, questioning why life had placed her heart on trial. The hardest part was telling Martins. When Beauty called him and said, "We need to talk," Martins already sensed something was wrong. They met at the same lagoon front, where they first realized they were in love, but this time the air felt heavier. Beauty's hands were shaking, her eyes swollen from crying. Martins cupped her face gently, concerned. "Beauty, what's going on?" She tried to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. When she finally whispered, "My father wants me to marry Roland," Martins took a step back as if her words had physically hit him. "What do you mean he wants you to marry Roland? Beauty, we've talked about our future. You said we were in this together." She burst into tears, explaining everything, her father's guilt, his sacrifices, his request, the emotional burden she couldn't shake off. Martins grabbed her hands desperately. "Beauty, look at me. I love you. You love me. We've built something real. You can't throw all of that away because your father is scared of the future." She sobbed harder. "Martins, I don't want to hurt him. He raised me alone. He never remarried because of me. He gave me everything. I owe him my life." Martin shook his head, tears forming in his eyes as well. "You don't owe him your happiness. You don't pay back sacrifice with heartbreak." But Beauty felt suffocated by guilt, feeling like choosing Martins meant betraying her father's trust. She tried to hold Martins one last time, but he gently pushed her back, heartbroken. "If you walk away from this, if you leave us because of pressure, Beauty, I don't know if I'll ever recover." Her heart shattered. She wanted to beg him to understand, to fight for her, to hold her, but she didn't have the strength. "I'm sorry," she whispered, turning away with trembling steps. And Martins, the man who loved her more than life itself, watched the woman who was supposed to be his future walk out of his arms because duty had become stronger than love. That night, Beauty cried until dawn. She felt as though she had lost a part of her soul, but she kept telling herself she was doing the right thing, that her father deserved peace, even if it meant sacrificing her own joy. In the days that followed, she avoided Martins completely, choosing silence as her shield. Mr. Stan, unaware of the storm he had caused in her heart, happily told Roland that Beauty had agreed. Roland began visiting more frequently, behaving as though their engagement was already written in stone. Beauty felt numb around him, responding with forced smiles and polite words, feeling like a bird locked inside a cage with golden bars. Whenever she passed places she and Martins once visited, Mama Shade's roadside food stand where they used to buy amala, the campus gate where he always waited for her, the BRT bus stop they once missed because they were laughing too hard, her chest tightened painfully. She tried to bury those memories, but they clung to her like shadows. And that was how the chapter of Beauty's love story ended, not with a fight, not with betrayal, but with sacrifice. She chose family over her heart, duty over desire, guilt over happiness. She told herself it was the mature thing to do, the honorable decision, the path of gratitude. But deep down, a quiet ache began to form, one that would follow her for years, whispering the question she was too afraid to confront. What if love was the only thing she truly needed? With a heart heavy with grief and a future she did not desire, Beauty stood at the doorstep of a life she never asked for, unaware that her sacrifice was only the beginning of a journey that would tear her world apart. The wedding day arrived with all the glory, noise, and color that Lagos was known for, yet Beauty felt as though she were drifting through a dream she could not wake from. From dawn, her father's compound in Sur-Alir was filled with decorators, caterers, and excited relatives who had traveled from Enugu and Abia to witness what they called the biggest blessing of Beauty's life. The compound was bright with yellow and wine fabrics, flowers hanging from every corner, and the smell of freshly fried small chops drifting through the air. Beauty's makeup artist worked on her face, praising her beauty repeatedly, saying she looked like an angel God created on a good day. But as the brush moved across her cheeks, Beauty stared into the mirror, searching for the joy brides were supposed to feel. She couldn't find it. She felt like she was watching someone else, a stranger whose smile didn't reach her eyes. Her wedding gown shimmered with soft crystals, her skin glowed, yet her heart felt heavier than the veil resting on her head. When she stepped out of the room, her father's eyes filled with tears. "You look exactly like your mother," he whispered, holding her hands with trembling pride. His voice cracked as he said, "Today, I feel like I finally kept my last promise to her, that you would never lack love or protection." Beauty forced a smile, hugged him tightly, and wished she could disappear into his arms like she did when she was little. But she was a woman now, a woman about to marry a man she did not love. In her heart, she whispered Martin's name, not out of rebellion, but out of longing for the comfort she once had. By the time they arrived at the beautifully decorated church in Acacia, guests had already filled the pews, gossiping excitedly about the wealthy businessman who was marrying the simple, beautiful daughter of an electronics dealer. The choir sang, cameras flashed, Roland stood at the altar beaming proudly, and Beauty felt like her feet were carrying her toward a future she wasn't sure she could survive. Every step she took down the aisle, escorted by her father, felt like walking deeper into a reality she was not prepared for. Guests rose, smiling widely, some whispering about how lucky she was, others admiring her dress, others were praising Roland's generosity. Beauty heard everything and nothing at the same time. Her eyes were fixed on Roland, but her mind was somewhere else, somewhere near the lagoon front at Unilag, beside Martin's, where love used to feel so simple, so effortless. Roland's smile grew wider as she approached. He kept adjusting his suit, proud of the woman he was about to claim, proud of the status the marriage symbolized. When Beauty reached him, he whispered, "You look perfect," but she barely heard him. The officiating pastor began the ceremony, reading scriptures about love and sacrifice, but the words felt ironic to Beauty. When it was time for the vows, Roland spoke with confidence, declaring promises about protection, wealth, and provision. Beauty's turn came, and she repeated the vows with a shaking voice, her fingers cold even though the hall was warm. She prayed no one noticed the crack in her voice when she said, "I do." Her father clapped with joy, tears streaming down his face, oblivious to the turmoil inside her. Outside the church, Martin stood across the road, a cap pulled low over his eyes. He hadn't planned to come. His friend dragged him there after seeing the wedding announcement online. Martin stood stiffly, his hands shaking, watching the woman he loved walk out of the church on another man's arm. He felt a pain so sharp it felt like something inside him had torn in half. When Beauty briefly scanned the crowd outside the church, her eyes met his. She froze for half a second, shock flooding through her. Martin's looked away immediately, his jaw clenched, fighting tears. Beauty felt her breath hitch, her heart collapsing inside her chest. But the crowd moved, pushing her forward, and the moment was gone. At the reception, Roland danced as if he had won a lottery. Guests sprayed money on them. Photographers recorded every angle, and Beauty smiled mechanically through it all. When the MC lifted her hand and declared her the luckiest bride in Lagos, she felt a stab in her chest. Because she knew the truth, she wasn't lucky at all. She was just obedient. Married life with Roland was nothing like Beauty imagined marriage to be. The first few weeks were full of visits from Roland's business partners, family members, and friends who came to congratulate them and admire the expensive apartment Roland had moved them into in Lekki. The house was beautiful, marble floors, chandeliers, imported furniture, everything luxury could offer, but it felt cold, empty, and unfamiliar. Roland treated Beauty well on the surface. He bought her gifts, gave her access to his credit cards, took her to restaurants, and introduced her proudly as my wife. But beneath the surface, Roland lacked emotional connection. He never asked her what she wanted, how she felt, or if she was adjusting well. He made decisions without consulting her, traveled without informing her, and expected her to always be available, beautiful, and quiet. Beauty, raised to be respectful and submissive, tried her best to be a good wife. She cooked meals he barely ate, prepared the house for him when he returned late from meetings, listened politely to his long business talks, and avoided bringing up sensitive topics. In his presence, she wore a mask of calmness, even though her heart was drowning. The silence in the marriage was the loudest thing Beauty had ever experienced. Some nights, Roland would come home smelling of cigars and stress, drop his jacket on the couch, mumble goodnight, and go straight to bed. Other nights, he would stay out entirely claiming business emergencies. Beauty never complained. She never raised her voice. She never questioned him. But every night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling the ache of a love she abandoned. Sometimes, she would quietly scroll through her old chats with Martins, reading their late-night conversations, their dreams, their silly arguments, the plans they made to travel after graduation. She would curl into herself and cry until her pillow was damp. She never told her father any of this. He was too happy, too peaceful, too proud. She couldn't break his heart with the truth, so she lied. She said marriage was beautiful. She said Roland was wonderful. She said she was happy, and every lie pulled her further from herself. Slowly, Beauty began to fall apart. Her laughter faded, her energy drained. She lost weight, her once bright eyes dimmed, her skin grew pale. She often sat for hours without speaking, lost in thoughts she couldn't escape. Her appetite disappeared, her nights were restless, and her days were a blur of silence. Roland barely noticed. He assumed she was adjusting to the responsibilities of marriage. On the rare days he did notice her sadness, he bought her something expensive, a new phone, a bracelet, a handbag, believing money could fix everything. But Beauty didn't want gifts. She wanted love. She wanted companionship. She wanted Martins. One day, while Roland was at work, Beauty felt a sharp pain in her chest that made her drop a tray she was carrying. The pain shot through her ribs like fire, leaving her breathless. She leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to steady herself. Her breathing grew shallow. Her vision blurred. For a moment, the world spun. She managed to sit down, telling herself it was stress, that she would be fine. But over the next weeks, the symptoms grew worse. Persistent coughing, fatigue, shortness of breath, pain that came in waves. Beauty hid it at first, hoping it would disappear. But one evening, while trying to prepare dinner, she felt her body betray her completely. Her knees buckled. The room spun violently. She collapsed onto the kitchen floor, her breath trembling, tears streaming as she whispered a prayer. God, please. Not now. Not after everything. Roland found her unconscious minutes later, panic gripping him as he lifted her in his arms and rushed her to a private hospital in Victoria Island. Beauty drifted in and out of consciousness, hearing distant voices, feeling cold hands touch her skin, sensing something was deeply wrong. Doctors moved quickly, asking Roland about her medical history, requesting tests upon tests, x-rays, blood work, scans. Roland paced the hallway, shaken for the first time since their marriage. Beauty lay on the hospital bed, staring at the white ceiling, a sinking feeling in her chest, not from the physical pain, but from the dread that her life was taking another heartbreaking turn. When the doctor finally walked in, his face was serious, his voice calm but heavy. He said they needed more scans, more tests, urgent ones. Roland frowned, impatient. What's wrong with her? Why all these tests? The doctor didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, we just need clarity on a few concerning findings. Beauty's heart dropped. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks as fear wrapped around her like a cold blanket. She thought about Martin's. She thought about the life she could have had. She thought about her father and how this news would break him. She thought about how she had sacrificed her heart for a future that was now collapsing before her eyes. And as the nurses wheeled her toward the radiology unit, Beauty realized something she had never admitted before. She had lost the love of her life, and now she might lose her life too. Beauty lay on the hospital bed, her body trembling not only from the pain, but from the weight of uncertainty pressing on her chest. The sterile scent of antiseptic, the low hum of machines, the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor, all of it pressed down on her like a heavy shroud. She closed her eyes tightly, wishing she could rewind time, wishing she could undo the choices that had led her here. Her mind kept returning to Martin's, his gentle smile, his laughter that always reached his eyes, the warmth of his hand in hers during those countless nights when the world felt unkind. Roland stood beside the bed, holding her hand with a grip that was firmer than usual. His face was pale, the confident ease he always carried replaced with furrowed brows and tight lips. Beauty, stay with me, he whispered, voice strained. I'm right here. His fingers squeezed hers, almost as if the pressure alone could hold the world together. She wanted to recoil, to push him away, but her body felt weak, every bone aching, every heartbeat threatening to break through her ribcage. I can't, she whispered hoarsely. I can't even breathe right. The doctor returned, file in hand, eyes grave but gentle. Mrs. Beauty, we have your test results. The words felt like a hammer striking against her ribs. Beauty's heart thudded wildly in her chest. It's serious, the doctor continued, lowering his voice. The scans indicate advanced lung cancer. Stage 4. The room seemed to tilt around her. The air she drew in felt thin and hot. Her stomach dropped. She blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of the syllables forming sentences she didn't want to hear. Stage 4. She murmured, almost to herself. Her voice cracked and rolled into a low sob. Roland's hand tightened around hers as if he could absorb her pain. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. Beauty. Oh, Beauty, he said, his voice shaking. For the first time, the man who had always appeared controlled, composed, and practical looked genuinely helpless. We'll fight this. We can get through this, he said, as though speaking those words aloud could summon the strength they both lacked. Yet even as he tried to reassure her, Beauty could feel the silent rift growing between them, a rift born not of his lack of care, but of all the years she had buried her heart elsewhere. Beauty's mind spun. The bright future she had imagined with her father's blessings seemed to collapse in slow motion before her eyes. Memories of Martin's filled her thoughts, searing her soul with regret and longing. Every sacrifice she had made, every quiet betrayal of her own heart, now felt like a cruel joke played by life itself. She wanted to scream, to weep, to clutch at someone who truly loved her, and in that moment, She realized that for the first time in years, she wanted to be honest with herself, with her father, and with the man who had stood silently by her side. Roland refused to leave her side that day, pacing the small space between the bed and the door, checking the machines, asking the nurses questions he barely understood, clinging to any fragment of hope he could find. "We'll get the best doctors," he insisted, voice trembling. "We'll try every treatment. No matter what, I'll be with you." His hands were warm, but his words, though sincere, could not fill the hollowness that had settled in her chest. Beauty wanted to reach out to him, to let him comfort her, but a deeper, older ache kept her hand rigid. She loved him in the way a person can love someone for years of shared moments and obligations, yet her heart had always been elsewhere. And now, with the shadow of death looming, that other love, the one she had suppressed, pressed against her ribs, demanding recognition. The following days were a blur of consultations, scans, and treatments she had never asked for. Beauty watched Roland's reactions carefully. The way he asked questions, the way he gently fed her water when she struggled to swallow, the way he massaged her aching back at night. He tried. He truly tried. But every attempt was a reminder of what she could never return. Her heart belonged to Martin's. She didn't know how to tell him, how to explain that it wasn't his fault, that she had loved him in a different way, that her happiness had always been stolen by a sense of duty. One quiet night, when the hospital corridor was empty and the fluorescent lights flickered above, Beauty made a decision. She couldn't continue living a lie. She couldn't continue letting Roland try to love her when her heart had always waited for someone else. She turned to him, eyes damp but resolute. "Roland, I can't do this anymore," she whispered. You've been wonderful in ways I didn't deserve, but I have to go back. Back to him." Roland froze. His eyes widened, reflecting shock, confusion, and fear. Back. Back to who? He asked, voice barely audible, like a man who had been punched in the chest. Beauty drew in a shallow breath. "Martin's, the man I've always loved." The silence that followed was deafening. Roland sank onto the chair beside her bed, his head in his hands, trembling. I thought you were happy," he murmured. I really tried to make you happy." His voice broke, and for the first time, Beauty saw the vulnerability of the man she had married out of duty. He was not cruel, not selfish. He was simply incapable of giving her a love that had never been hers to give. She reached out, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "You've been everything I didn't deserve," she said softly. "But my heart, it's someone else's. I need to spend the time I have left where my heart truly belongs." Roland looked at her, tears streaming down his face. He wanted to argue, to demand her to stay, to fight for her, but he couldn't. The truth in her eyes was a hammer breaking through every illusion. If this is what you want, then go," he said finally, voice cracking. I just want you to be at peace." Beauty nodded, heart aching, realizing how much this man had tried and how impossible it was to repay a kindness with a heart that could not love back. The moment she left the hospital to see Martin's was surreal. Every taxi ride, every street corner, every familiar Logos landmark seemed to scream with memories she had buried. Unilag Gates, the lagoon front, the little food stands where they had spent hours dreaming of a future together. And then finally, she saw him. Martin's, standing just as he always had, calm, strong, but with an undercurrent of hope and fear in his eyes. She hesitated. Her knees threatened to buckle. "Martin's," she whispered. He stepped forward immediately, closing the distance. "Beauty, is it really you?" His voice trembled, barely controlled. She could see the relief, the fear, the unspoken prayers in his eyes. And as she collapsed into his arms, her tears soaked into his shirt, and he held her as if the weight of all her suffering had fallen onto him. And yet, he would bear it without question. "I'm here," he murmured. "I'll never let anything happen to you again." For the first time in years, Beauty felt her heart stop aching. Not because the illness was gone, not because the world was fair, but because for the first time, she was exactly where she belonged. They cried together, laughed quietly through sobs, and whispered the words they had never dared to speak aloud in years of separation. "I've missed you," she said. I've always loved you too," Martin's replied, holding her tighter. Beauty's journey had changed. She had chosen love over duty, even knowing that her days were limited. She had chosen to be where her heart was, even if her body was betraying her. And as she leaned against Martin's, tears streaming freely, she realized that even in the face of death, happiness could be found. Two hearts reunited, beating together in defiance of all the pain that life had thrown at them. The Lagos sun poured through the wide windows of Martin's modest apartment, but for Beauty, it felt warmer than anything she had ever known. She sat on the small balcony, wrapped in a soft shawl, holding a cup of tea she could barely taste, yet feeling more alive than she had in years. 2 weeks had passed since she had officially left Roland and returned to the man she had loved all her life. 2 weeks since she had felt the weight of her own heart lift, allowing the kind of happiness that can only come from being where you truly belong. The days that followed were a mixture of laughter and tears, of quiet conversations and long silences that spoke volumes. Martins refused to leave her side, ensuring she ate, rested, and kept her spirits alive. The love that had once only existed in stolen glances and late-night dreams now lived in every small gesture. The way he brushed her hair gently, the way he poured water for her, the way he held her trembling hands and whispered, "I'm here. Always." Their bond deepened with each passing day, and Beauty felt herself healing, not physically, but in a way far deeper than any medicine could provide. She had found her home, not in a house or a city, but in the arms of the man she had always loved. Even as her illness progressed, the two of them savored every moment together. Every morning, they walked along the Lagos Lagoon, watching the fishermen and children playing along the sandy banks. Every afternoon, they shared meals prepared carefully by Martins, though Beauty sometimes ate only a few bites. Evenings were reserved for conversation, music, and the simple joy of proximity. She found herself laughing again, her laughter timid at first, then louder and more confident, echoing the carefree girl she had once been in university, the girl who had met Martins for the first time beneath the U-N-I-L-A-G trees, dreaming of futures filled with possibility. Beauty's father, Mr. Stan, had been invited over one afternoon, sitting in the living room, his eyes tracing every movement of his daughter with a mix of worry and pride. When she had hugged him, frail but radiant, he had wept openly. "I was so worried," he said, his voice trembling. "But seeing you here, happy, with him, I understand now. I understand why you had to go back to him." Beauty held his hands, feeling the roughness of his palms, the same hands that had once held her in childhood, guiding her, protecting her, providing her everything he could. "Father," she whispered, "I wanted you to be proud of me, but I also wanted to be happy. Truly happy, even if it's only for a short time." He kissed the top of her head, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You will always be my daughter. Proud, loved, no matter what." Not a day went by that they didn't face the reality of her illness. There were nights when the coughing fits left her gasping for air, nights when the pain threatened to break her into pieces, and nights when she would stare at Martins with tears in her eyes and whisper, "I don't want you to see me like this." And each time, Martins would hold her, rocking her gently, whispering words that no medicine could ever provide. "I see you, Beauty. I love you, all of you. Sick, weak, frail, doesn't matter. I'm not going anywhere." Their love, once restrained by circumstance and duty, now burned brighter than ever, defiant against the shadows that loomed. The city of Lagos continued its noisy existence around them, indifferent to the small battles waged within one tiny apartment. Yet inside, time slowed and stretched, shaped by laughter, stolen kisses, and whispered promises. Beauty found herself talking about her dreams again, not the ones she had suppressed for duty, but the ones that had always lived quietly in her heart, teaching children, opening a small art studio, writing letters she had never sent. Martins encouraged every idea, supporting her with a devotion that made her pulse quicken, even on days when her body betrayed her with weakness. There were also moments of quiet reflection when Beauty would gaze at Martins and feel the weight of what she had lost and regained. She thought of Roland, wondering how he was coping with the divorce, hoping he'd found some peace and understanding that she had not left him out of malice, but out of necessity. And she thought of her father, grateful that he had finally seen her happiness, even if it had taken suffering to reach it. As weeks turned to months, their bond deepened, stronger than any joy or heartbreak they had known before. Martins would cradle her in the evenings, her head on his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat as if it could keep her alive. Beauty would trace the lines of his hands with her fingers, memorizing the feel of his skin, the strength beneath the gentleness. "Promise me," she whispered one night, her voice thin from exhaustion. "Promise me you'll remember me, even when I'm gone." Martins held her tighter, tears spilling freely. "I promise," he said, his lips brushing hers. "I'll remember every laugh, every tear, every moment. I'll carry you with me forever." Despite the looming shadow of cancer, the couple embraced life in ways that neither of them had imagined possible. They danced in their living room to old university playlists, shared ice cream on lazy afternoons, and held each other through storms of pain and grief. Beauty learned to laugh again, learned to find joy in small victories. A morning where she could sit up without dizziness, a day she could walk through the market with Martins without gasping for breath. Each day was precious, each moment a gift, and she clung to them with a fierce, almost desperate love. 2 years passed in this delicate balance of love and illness. The world outside continued, bustling, loud, and oblivious. But inside their sanctuary, Beauty and Martins carved a life filled with meaning, connection, and pure affection. Friends and family visited, carefully navigating the fragility of her health, offering support, while Martins remained her constant anchor. They celebrated birthdays, small achievements, and even minor improvements in her health with an intensity that made each occasion feel monumental. Then came the night that Beauty had always feared, but this time it felt calm. She awoke briefly to the hum of the city outside, to the warmth of Martin's arms holding her close, and to the soft rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her cheek. She looked up at him, eyes tired but peaceful. "I love you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you for everything." Martins kissed her forehead, tears wetting her hair, and murmured, "I love you, always." She drifted back into sleep, her breathing deep and even, the corners of her lips lifting into the faintest smile. In that quiet night, surrounded by love and the life she had chosen, Beauty passed away, not in pain, not in fear, but peacefully, her heart full, her soul unburdened, leaving behind a world forever changed by the courage to follow one's heart. In the days that followed, Martins, though heartbroken, carried her memory like a living flame, honoring her by cherishing every moment, living fully, and keeping the essence of their love alive in every choice he made. Mr. Stan, her father, found solace in knowing that his daughter had finally been happy, that her heart had been restored to where it belonged. He would often visit Martins, sharing memories of Beauty, laughing, crying, and cherishing the moments they had been given together. And in quiet, private moments, Martins would look at the Lagos skyline and whisper her name, feeling her presence in the warmth of the sun, in the gentle winds, in the rhythm of the city she had loved. Beauty's story became a legend whispered in homes and told in gatherings, a tale of courage, of loyalty to one's heart, and the breathtaking power of love, even when life is too short to compromise. Though her body was gone, her spirit lingered in the laughter of those she loved, in the hearts she touched, and in the legacy of a love story that refused to be denied. And in the end, Beauty had lived and died on her own terms, in peace, in love, and in the arms of the man who had always been her true home. Thank you for watching and sharing in this journey. Your love and support keep these stories alive. May your own path be filled with favor, peace, and the kind of love that never gives up. Don't forget to subscribe, drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from. I might just give you a shout out in the next story.